30 years of marriage, and the ballroom was glowing in our honor. Chandeliers glittered above rows of champagne glasses, the kind of golden light that made everything look softer, warmer, almost unreal. I stood near the center of the dance floor, smiling as friends, family, and Walter's business partners toasted us. To 30 years of love, loyalty, and success, someone said, and the crowd cheered. I lifted my glass, my cheeks aching from holding the smile. Then I saw him. At first, my mind told me it couldn't be real. Maybe the lighting was tricking me. Maybe it was a friendly whisper too close. Maybe my tired eyes were playing games. But no. There was Walter, my husband of 3 decades, his hand gripping the waist of a girl half my age, her bartender's uniform still clinging to her like she hadn't even clocked out. His mouth pressed against hers, shameless and greedy, right there at the edge of the bar. The sound of crystal clinking filled the room. Someone gasped. Another guest whispered, too loud to ignore. "Is he kissing?" The bartender? Heat rushed to my face, not from the wine, but from the wave of humiliation that slammed into me. 30 years of my life, sacrificed for this man, and he couldn't even wait until the end of the night to disgrace me. He chose our anniversary celebration, the party I had planned, paid for, dressed up for, to shove a knife into my chest in front of everyone who mattered. My hand tightened around the stem of the champagne flute. I could hear my pulse in my ears, a furious drum. "Walter," I said, my voice sharp enough to slice through the music. The room went silent. Even the band froze, instruments hovering mid-air. He broke away from her, his lips still slick, his eyes wide with a drunken mix of shock and arrogance. "Amelia, this isn't—" "Don't you dare," I cut him off. My voice didn't crack. It rang, clear and cold, across the ballroom. "Don't you dare feed me excuses while half of Chicago watches you grope a child in uniform." The bartender girl blanched, tugging down the hem of her skirt, shrinking into herself as murmurs swept the room. She tried to step away, but Walter grabbed her wrist as if clinging to the last shred of power he thought he had. 30 years, I said, my chest heaving. 30 years I stood by you, through your late nights, through your business failures, through your arrogance. And this, I gestured toward the girl, this is what I get in return? Gasps. Someone muttered, "Shameful." Another voice hissed, "Unbelievable." Walter's jaw clenched, his face reddening. "Amelia, you're making a scene." I laughed, the kind of laugh that rattles the walls. "I'm making a scene? You kissed a bartender at our anniversary party? You made this scene, Walter. I'm just giving it the spotlight it deserves." I stepped closer, heels clicking on the polished floor. Every eye followed me. I could feel the weight of decades, friends, family, associates, pressing in around us, waiting to see what the wronged wife would do. I raised the glass still in my hand, full of golden champagne. For a moment, he thought I was going to toast again, that maybe I'd swallow my pride the way I had swallowed his insults for years. His shoulders eased, his lips almost curved into that smug half-smile. Then I threw it. The glass shattered against his chest, champagne drenching his expensive suit, shards glittering as they scattered across the marble floor. The crowd gasped again, louder this time. Walter flinched, blinking in shock as liquid dripped down his tie. "You don't deserve me," I said, my voice steady, vibrating with a fury I had buried for years. "You don't deserve this marriage, this life, or even this humiliation. But I'll make sure you feel every ounce of it." And then, I slapped him. The crack echoed through the ballroom like a whip. His head snapped to the side, a red mark blooming across his cheek. The bartender whimpered and slipped away, her shoes squeaking against the floor. For a moment, silence held. The kind of silence that stretches forever, where no one dares move or breathe. Then whispers spread, hissing like snakes through the crowd. "Did you see that?" She slapped him. Good for her. Walter turned back toward me, eyes blazing, his pride collapsing under the weight of the witnesses. But before he could speak, Before he could beg or rage or spin a story, I lifted my chin. "I'm done," I said. 2 words, sharp and final. I turned and walked away, the hem of my dress sweeping the floor like a queen's train. My heels clicked in rhythm with my heartbeat, fierce, unbroken, alive. As I reached the doors, I didn't look back. Not once. Because if I did, I knew I'd see his face. Stunned, angry, terrified, and the satisfaction of that sight might weaken me. Instead, I kept my eyes forward, my shoulders straight. Outside, the night air hit me, cold and bracing. I inhaled deeply, letting the chill slice through the fire inside me. My hands trembled, but not from weakness, from resolve. 30 years I had given that man. 30 years of loyalty, compromise, patience. And tonight, he had spit on all of it. But he had made one fatal mistake, humiliating me in public, where his empire of respectability mattered most. I wasn't just walking away from the party, I was walking into war. And I vowed, under the sharp Chicago night sky, that Walter Schwinker would regret the day he thought he could betray me. By morning, he would already start to feel the misery. I met Walter when I was just 19, fresh out of high school, and still trying to figure out what adulthood meant. He was already ambitious then, older by a few years, a man with slick confidence and grand promises. I remember the first time he took my hand, told me he was going to build something big, that I'd never have to worry about anything again. I wanted to believe him, and so I did. We married young. I traded the dreams I had, college, traveling, maybe even art school, for the stability he swore he could give me. I told myself I was investing in our future, even when it felt more like investing in his. When my parents passed, leaving me their modest inheritance, I didn't think twice. I poured every dollar into the foundation of Walter's business, a construction company that eventually grew into one of Chicago's most respectable firms. He became Walter Schwinker, the man who built half the city. But behind that reputation was my money, my sacrifices, and my silence. In those early years, I was proud to stand behind him. I raised our daughter, Sophie, while he worked late nights. I took care of the house, the bills, the endless details of a life we were supposed to be building together. When the firm finally took off, he would tell people it was because of his grit, his vision. Rarely did he mention the inheritance that bought his first contracts, the wife who clipped coupons so he could wine and dine investors. But I told myself it didn't matter. What mattered was that Sophie had a home, that the lights stayed on, that Walter felt like a man. I remember nights sitting by the window, waiting for him to come home. He'd walk in past midnight, smelling faintly of whiskey and cologne that wasn't mine. I'd ask how the meeting went, and he'd mumble about clients or networking. Sometimes he'd come home with lipstick on his collar, and I'd convince myself it was a stray stain, a harmless accident. I ignored the red flags because acknowledging them felt like setting fire to everything I had built my life on. When Sophie was little, she'd ask, "Mom, why is Daddy always gone?" I'd smile and say, "Because he's working hard for us." She accepted it then, but children grow. They notice more than we give them credit for. By the time she was a teenager, I caught her rolling her eyes whenever he canceled dinner, whenever I covered for him. I told myself I was protecting her, but really, I was protecting him. The anniversaries became smaller, colder. He used to surprise me with flowers, handwritten notes, even breakfast in bed. Over time, it turned into last-minute gifts, jewelry he didn't bother to wrap, dinners he barely stayed awake for. I swallowed the hurt, telling myself that long marriages went through phases, that 30 years meant weathering storms, that I was strong enough to hold it all together. But somewhere along the line, loyalty became my prison. The humiliation at our anniversary wasn't the first betrayal. It was just the first one I couldn't pretend away. Deep down, I had known. I had known when he started locking his phone, when he spent more weekends at the office, when he suddenly cared too much about his hairline. I had known when he began calling me Amelia instead of the softer names he used to use. I had known, but I had refused to see. It was Sophie who forced my eyes open completely. A week before the anniversary party, she came into the kitchen while I was cooking. She was 24 now, grown, with the same sharp brown eyes I once had before years of denial dulled them. She leaned against the counter, hesitant, her fingers tracing the rim of her coffee mug. "Mom," she said carefully, "I need to tell you something." I paused, spoon in hand, waiting for her to continue. "I saw Dad downtown last week." Her voice wavered. "He wasn't alone." My stomach dropped. "Who was he with?" Sophie looked at me, guilt flickering in her eyes, as if she was betraying me by saying it aloud. "A woman. Young. They were holding hands, laughing, like a couple." I wanted to dismiss it, to say she must have been mistaken, that Walter was loyal. But her eyes, those sharp, unflinching eyes, held no doubt. "Are you sure?" I whispered. She nodded. "I'm sorry, Mom. I didn't want to hurt you. But you deserve to know." The room seemed to tilt around me. The pot simmered on the stove, steam curling into the air, but I couldn't feel the heat anymore. All I felt was the weight of truth pressing down, suffocating. Sophie reached for my hand. "Don't protect him anymore, please. You've done enough." Her words lodged deep in my chest, sharper than any knife Walter could wield. For years, I had convinced myself that ignoring the signs was noble, that shielding Sophie from the ugliness was love. But my own daughter saw the cracks I refused to face. And now she was the one pulling me into the light. That night, I lay awake replaying every red flag, every excuse, every betrayal I had swept under the rug. And for the first time in decades, I didn't feel like a loyal wife. I felt like a fool. But fools don't stay fools forever. By the time our anniversary arrived, I wasn't walking into that ballroom blind. I was walking in with eyes wide open, ready to catch him in the act. And when he kissed that bartender in front of everyone, it wasn't just humiliation. It was confirmation. Confirmation that Sophie had been right. Confirmation that I was done sacrificing. Confirmation that Walter Schwinker had underestimated the woman who built his empire. The morning after the anniversary party, the house felt like a mausoleum. Silence pressed against the walls, the kind of silence that doesn't comfort but suffocates. Walter hadn't come home. I didn't bother wondering where he was. For once, I wasn't consumed with questions. I was consumed with clarity. I brewed coffee, poured it into my favorite mug, the one Sophie painted for me when she was little, and sat at the kitchen table with a notebook. For 30 years, I'd been his anchor. Today, I became the storm. Step 1. Money. I had always let Walter handle the finances, but that didn't mean I was blind. Years of signing checks, reading statements, watching him boast about his empire had given me all the knowledge I needed. I logged into the joint accounts, my fingers steady on the keyboard. Savings, investments, the house deed. It was all under both our names. My inheritance had made sure of that. With a few clicks, I froze the accounts, ensuring he couldn't bleed me dry while running around with bartenders. Step 2. Protection. I called my lawyer, an old friend of my father's, someone Walter had always underestimated. He answered on the second ring, voice gravelly but sharp as ever. "Amelia, it's been years," he said. "What can I do for you?" I took a deep breath. I want a divorce, and I want it done right. No loopholes, no mercy. A pause, then a low whistle. "What did Walter do?" "Enough," I said simply. My voice didn't crack. "I'll email you everything. Draft the papers." Step 3. Sanctuary. I walked upstairs to the bedroom we had shared for 3 decades. The bed was neatly made, as if trying to pretend it still belonged to us. I opened the closet and pulled out a suitcase. My hands moved fast. Clothes, toiletries, documents, jewelry I had bought myself. Not the diamonds he flaunted as peace offerings, but the small gold locket my mother gave me, the one holding a picture of Sophie as a baby. When Sophie arrived later that morning, she found me zipping the suitcase shut. Her eyes widened. "You're leaving?" she asked. I nodded. "I'm not waiting for him to walk through that door and spin another lie. I'm taking control this time. She hugged me tight, her voice muffled against my shoulder. About time, Mom. Step 4, the house. The Schwinker home wasn't just bricks and wood. It was a fortress I had built with my parents' inheritance. Walter liked to brag that he bought it for his family, but the truth was, the down payment came straight from my account. And now, it would become my weapon. I called a realtor, a woman I trusted. List it, I said. Quietly. High value. I'll send the documents. By the time Walter realized the house was on the market, it would already be under contract. The thought sent a flicker of satisfaction through my veins. Step 5, exposure. I wasn't ready to go public, not yet, but I was laying the groundwork. Screenshots of suspicious texts I'd found months ago, photos Sophie had taken downtown, the guest who had snapped a picture at the party when Walter's lips were locked on the bartender's. Proof stacked neatly in a folder on my laptop, waiting for the right moment. Each step I took stripped away the years of helplessness I had wrapped around myself like chains. I wasn't the humiliated wife anymore. I was a woman with a plan. By the third day, Walter finally showed up. I was in the living room sorting through paperwork when the front door creaked open. His shoes scuffed the floor, his voice slurred with exhaustion and anger. "Amelia!" he barked. "What the hell did you think you were doing last night, slapping me in front of everyone? Do you have any idea how that makes me look?" I didn't even look up. "You managed that all on your own." He stormed in, his suit wrinkled, his tie hanging loose. "People are calling me nonstop. Clients, friends. You embarrassed me." I finally raised my head, meeting his bloodshot eyes. "You kissed another woman at our anniversary party. You embarrassed yourself." His face darkened, but before he could unleash his temper, his phone buzzed. He pulled it out, frowned, and cursed under his breath. "What?" I asked, my voice calm. "My card was declined," he snapped. "At the hotel." "What did you do?" I smiled, slow and deliberate. "I protected what's mine." For the first time in years, I watched Walter's confidence crack. He stared at me, disbelief etched into every line of his face. "You wouldn't." "Oh, but I did," I said. "The accounts are frozen. The lawyer is drafting the papers. And by the way, the house will be listed by the end of the week." He staggered back as if I had struck him again. "You're insane," he whispered. "No," I said, standing tall, suitcase by my side. "I've just stopped pretending. You've mistaken my silence for weakness, Walter. That ends today." I brushed past him, the suitcase wheels clicking against the tile. He reached out, grabbing my arm, but I shook him off. "Amelia, wait. We can talk about this." I turned, fire burning in my chest. "Talk? You made your choice when you put your lips on that girl. Now you'll live with it." And with that, I walked out, leaving him in the house he thought he owned, surrounded by walls I had already set in motion to tear down. The war had officially begun. By the end of the week, the ripples of my choices had turned into waves crashing through Walter's carefully polished life. The first was money. With the accounts frozen, Walter's credit cards began declining one after another. At the hotel, at restaurants, even at the gas station, every time he had to make an awkward call, scramble for cash, or slink away red-faced. For a man who prided himself on being untouchable, the humiliation must have cut deeper than my slap at the party. Then came the mistress. I hadn't needed to lift a finger there. Society had taken care of it for me. Whispers spread fast in Chicago's circles, and the story of Walter kissing a bartender at his own anniversary party had become delicious gossip by Monday morning. The girl, no older than Sophie, found herself at the center of it all. She was labeled a homewrecker, a gold digger, a fool who thought she could rise by attaching herself to Walter Schwinker. Her job at the hotel bar disappeared overnight. Management claimed it was for policy reasons, but everyone knew it was to distance themselves from scandal. Walter's business partners weren't far behind. Clients who once praised his reliability now raised their eyebrows at his judgment. Deals stalled. A longtime investor called me quietly, almost apologetically, to say, "Amelia, I just don't know if I can keep my money tied to someone whose name is in the papers for all the wrong reasons." Family reacted too. Walter's younger brother, Daniel, who had always admired him, called me with a tremor in his voice. "Amelia?" I don't know what he was thinking. Just know I'm on your side. His words carried both pity and shame, the kind that only comes when someone realizes their hero is just a fraud. Even Walter's father, a man who once told me, "A wife's duty is to support her husband no matter what," sent Sophie a curt message. "Tell your mother I'd like to speak with her." Not Walter. Her. That was the first time in 30 years the patriarch had chosen me over his son. And then there was Sophie herself, my daughter, my anchor. She didn't gloat, didn't say "I told you so." She simply stood by me, steady and fierce, as if she had been preparing for this battle longer than I had. "You're stronger than him, Mom," she said one night as we unpacked my suitcase in her apartment. "You always were. Now he has to learn it too." Meanwhile, Walter spiraled. The calls started small, voicemails, texts, all variations of "let's talk." Then they grew desperate. One evening, as Sophie and I sat on the couch watching the news, my phone lit up with his name. Against my better judgment, I answered. "Amelia," he said, his voice strained, hollow. "Please, we can work this out. Just unlock the accounts. You don't understand what position you've put me in." I almost laughed. "You're right, Walter. I don't understand how a grown man, after 30 years of marriage, thinks kissing a bartender in public is something his wife should work out." His tone cracked. "I made a mistake. One mistake. Don't throw away our whole life. One mistake?" My voice was ice. 30 years of excuses, of late nights, of lipstick that wasn't mine. Those weren't mistakes, Walter. They were choices. And now I'm making mine. "Amelia, please," he whispered. I could hear it in his breathing, the sound of a man realizing the ground beneath him was finally collapsing. I hung up without another word. For the first time in years, I didn't feel weak after cutting him off. I felt powerful. Because this wasn't just revenge. This was justice. Long overdue. And Walter Schwinker was only beginning to feel it. Walter didn't learn. Or maybe he couldn't. Pride is a disease, and his had rotted every ounce of sense he had left. 2 weeks after the anniversary debacle, I received an invitation, hand-delivered no less, to a dinner at his favorite steakhouse. The card was embossed, like he was still some magnate worth impressing. "Family dinner," it read, "to discuss reconciliation." Reconciliation. The word made me laugh out loud, but Sophie wanted to see it play out, and a part of me knew the crowd he'd gathered would serve as the perfect audience for his next fall. The restaurant was packed that night. Chicago's elite filled the tables, business partners, cousins, even his aging parents. Walter sat at the head like a king still clinging to his crumbling throne. The mistress was there too, hair curled, lips painted bright red, as if pretending she belonged in this world would make it so. I arrived in silence, black dress, no jewelry but my mother's locket. The chatter died down as I entered. I didn't need to command the room, my presence did it for me. Walter rose, arms open, that fake politician's smile plastered on his face. "Amelia, thank you for coming." I sat without taking his hand. Sophie followed close behind, her glare sharp enough to cut marble. He cleared his throat, addressing the table. "We're here as family to remember that mistakes happen, and forgiveness is possible. Amelia and I held up my hand. "Don't you dare use the word forgiveness in this room." Gasps rippled through the diners. The mistress shifted uncomfortably in her chair. Walter's smile faltered. "Amelia," he said through gritted teeth, "this isn't the place." "Oh, it's exactly the place." My voice carried, deliberate, steady. "This is the same man who kissed a bartender at his 30th wedding anniversary in front of half the city. And tonight, he drags me here to reconcile, while sitting beside the same girl he betrayed me with." All eyes swiveled to the mistress. Her painted lips trembled. She tried to speak, but I cut her off with a look. "Do you know how he paid for your little handbags? For your hotel rooms?" I asked, my voice sharp as glass. "With the inheritance my parents left me, with the money I gave him to start his empire. Everything you've touched, every dinner, every drink, was mine first." A silence deeper than any I'd felt before swallowed the room. Walter's face turned scarlet. He opened his mouth, but no words came. I leaned forward, my hands flat on the white tablecloth. "You've mistaken my silence for stupidity. You've mistaken my loyalty for weakness. But make no mistake, Walter. This family, this legacy, this name belongs to me. Not to you. Not anymore." The words landed like thunder. Somewhere in the back, a phone camera clicked. The mistress blinked, then pushed her chair back, the legs scraping loudly against the floor. I didn't know," she stammered, her cheeks blotched red. She grabbed her purse, shot Walter a look of pure disgust, and stormed out. The table erupted in whispers. Sophie sat taller beside me, pride shining in her eyes. Walter, meanwhile, looked smaller than I'd ever seen him. His hands shook as he fumbled for his glass of water, his authority leaking out of him like air from a punctured balloon. "You're humiliating me," he hissed, leaning closer. I smiled, cold and sharp. "No, Walter, you humiliated yourself. I'm just giving everyone the courtesy of seeing it clearly." I stood then, pushing my chair back with measured calm. The whole room followed my every move. I straightened my dress, lifted my chin, and delivered the line I knew would echo long after I left. "While you kissed a bartender, Walter, I secured everything you own." The words hung in the air, heavy, undeniable. I walked out without waiting for his response, Sophie at my side. Behind me, the restaurant buzzed with murmurs, the kind that spread fast, the kind that ruin reputations forever. By the time we reached the car, my phone was already buzzing, friends texting, a cousin calling, even a stranger tagging me in a blurry photo online. My mic drop had become a headline before dessert had even been served. And Walter? He was left at that table, red-faced, abandoned, utterly humiliated again, exactly where he belonged. I should have expected it. Walter was never the type to retreat quietly. Humiliation made him reckless, and reckless men make loud moves. Within a week of the restaurant debacle, his face was everywhere. Local news ran a glossy interview where he sat in a navy suit, jaw clenched like a man wronged, not a man guilty. "My wife is overreacting," he told the reporter, feigning sorrow. 30 years of marriage can't be undone by one lapse in judgment. I was lonely, neglected. Amelia became distant, cold. She pushed me away. I watched from Sophie's apartment couch, my hands tightening around a throw pillow. Cold? Distant? I had been everything. Caretaker, partner, financier. Yet here he was, painting me as a frigid villain while the world nodded along. He wasn't finished. On social media, Walter posted photos of himself shaking hands at charity events, smiling beside business partners, even staging dinners with distant relatives. Each caption oozed sanctimony. Family matters. Forgiveness matters. Don't let anger destroy what love built. It almost worked. For a few days, comments trickled in. Poor Walter. Everyone makes mistakes. Amelia should forgive him. It's just one kiss. But then the receipts dropped. I hadn't released them myself. I didn't need to. Gossip has a way of finding daylight, and someone from the anniversary party had leaked the photo. Crystal clear. Walter, his lips locked with the bartender's. My champagne glass, mid-throw. The caption read, "This wasn't one mistake. This was our anniversary." The image spread like wildfire. Screenshots of his texts surfaced next. Late-night promises to the bartender, hotel reservations paid from joint accounts. Hashtags trended. Char Bartendergate, Schwinker scandal, and my personal favorite, While You Kissed. Suddenly, Walter wasn't a wronged husband. He was a punchline. Memes flooded the internet. Photoshopped images of him kissing everyone from politicians to cartoon characters, each tagged with, "While you kissed." Underneath, people shared their own stories of betrayal, their own scars. My pain had become a mirror for thousands. Clients began dropping statements. "We have chosen to end our partnership with Mr. Schwinker, effective immediately." His construction firm's website crashed from angry comments. Charity boards quietly removed his name from their sites. Even the mistress chimed in. She posted a shaky video online, mascara streaking down her cheeks. "I thought he loved me," she sobbed. "But he lied to me too. He said his marriage was over. He said his wife was just a bitter woman clinging to his money. I didn't know he'd humiliate me like this." Her tears sealed his coffin. Whatever sympathy Walter hoped to gain evaporated. Now he wasn't just a cheater. He was a manipulator, a liar who used women, young and old, to fuel his ego. I stayed silent. That was the beauty of it. I didn't need to defend myself, didn't need to step in. The evidence spoke louder than I ever could. Walter flailed, tried to backpedal, tried to apologize again on morning radio. But the damage was done. Every word he spoke sounded hollow, rehearsed. The night I realized he was fully exposed, I sat at Sophie's kitchen table, scrolling through my phone. One viral tweet had racked up thousands of likes. "While you kissed a bartender, she built the empire." While you kissed. I leaned back, exhaling slowly. It wasn't just revenge anymore, it was justice. Amplified, undeniable. Walter Schwinker, the man who once strutted through Chicago like he owned it, was now the city's favorite cautionary tale. And there was no interview, no photo op, no excuse that could save him. He wasn't just humiliated, he was finished. The scandal had stripped Walter's dignity, but the law would strip everything else. When the divorce proceedings began, I walked into the courthouse with my lawyer at my side and Sophie behind me. I wore a navy suit, hair pinned back, every inch the woman Walter had underestimated for 30 years. He arrived disheveled, face gaunt, his once polished suits hanging loose on his frame. The cameras flashed as we entered, reporters calling out questions. For once, I didn't lower my gaze. Let them see me. Let them see her. Inside, the battle wasn't loud. It was precise. My lawyer laid out receipts, proof of my inheritance funding his empire, bank records of hotel stays, photos of him parading around town while I raised our daughter alone. Every piece of evidence carved away at his defense until there was nothing left but shame. Walter tried to argue, tried to paint me as vindictive. "She's destroying me out of spite," he told the judge, his voice cracking. But the judge only frowned. "Mr. Schwinker, your own actions destroyed you. Mrs. Schwinker is simply protecting what is hers." By the end of the month, the ruling came down hard. The house was mine. Half the business shares transferred into my name. Alimony awarded, with custody agreements in my favor should Sophie ever need support. Even though she was grown, the court recognized my role as the stable parent. Walter's assets, once sprawling across accounts and investments, were sliced cleanly down the middle. But the half that remained wasn't his for long. Creditors circled, lawsuits from disgruntled clients piled up, and legal fees drained him dry. Within weeks, the man who once boasted of being untouchable was begging friends for loans. His family turned their backs too. His younger brother Daniel called me after the ruling. "Amelia," he said softly, "I should have seen this coming. He's burned every bridge. Just know, you'll always be family to me, not him." Even his father, the stern patriarch who once lectured me about loyalty, sent Walter a letter that quickly found its way into the press. "You've shamed this family beyond repair. Your name is no longer welcome in my house." I almost pitied him then. Almost. The mistress fared no better. After her tearful video, she disappeared from social media, hounded by ridicule and threats. Rumors swirled that she tried to cling to Walter, but without money or status, he was no prize. She returned to obscurity, her name whispered as a cautionary tale at every bar in the city. Meanwhile, I thrived. Sophie and I moved into the house, filled it with warmth he had long drained from its walls. For the first time in years, laughter returned to the halls. I opened an art studio, something I'd shelved decades ago, pouring color onto canvases instead of swallowing bitterness. Every brushstroke felt like reclaiming a piece of myself. Walter, on the other hand, unraveled. His company hemorrhaged clients until it filed for bankruptcy. Friends stopped answering his calls. His phone, once buzzing with invitations, fell silent. He was forced to sell his car, then his suits, until he was left with scraps of the life he had flaunted. One evening, Sophie showed me a photo online. Walter, standing outside a dingy motel on the edge of town, his belongings stuffed into 2 garbage bags. His hair unkempt, his face hollow, eyes darting as if searching for someone to blame. The caption read, "From Empire to Exile. On while you kissed." I stared at the image for a long time. This man, once towering over me with arrogance, now reduced to shadows under a flickering neon sign. He wasn't Walter the builder anymore. He was just Walter, the man who kissed a bartender and lost everything. And he was utterly alone. I didn't expect to see Walter again. After the court rulings, after the photo of him standing outside that motel went viral, I thought he'd disappear into the shadows of his own making. But life has a cruel way of circling back, demanding one final reckoning. It happened on a gray Chicago afternoon. I was leaving my art studio, the scent of oil paint still clinging to my hands, when I saw him waiting by the curb. He looked smaller than I remembered, coat too thin for the weather, shoes scuffed, eyes hollow. For a moment, I didn't recognize him as the man who once strutted through ballrooms and boardrooms. "Amelia," he said, stepping forward. His voice cracked, raw with desperation. I froze, then straightened my shoulders. "Walter." He swallowed hard, hands trembling. "Please. I need to talk to you. Just 5 minutes." Against every instinct, I agreed. Maybe because part of me needed to see this through, to close the door myself. We walked to a nearby park, nearly empty in the biting wind. He sat on a bench, shoulders hunched, and I stayed standing, arms crossed. He looked up at me, eyes glassy. "I've lost everything. The house, the company, my family. You were right about all of it." His voice faltered. "But I can't live like this, Amelia. I can't survive without you." I studied him, the man who had once towered over me, now crumbling into a shell. "You survived just fine when you had her lips on yours." His face twisted in shame. "It was a mistake, a stupid, selfish mistake. 30 years. We had 30 years, Amelia. Doesn't that count for something?" 30 years of me sacrificing, I shot back. 30 years of me pouring my inheritance, my time, my life into you. And you repaid me with lies, with humiliation, with public disgrace. That's what 30 years count for. He shook his head violently, tears welling. I was weak. I wanted to feel young again, wanted someone to admire me. But it meant nothing. You're the only woman I've ever truly loved. I almost laughed, bitter and sharp. You don't love, Walter. You consume. You take and take, until there's nothing left but ashes. And when the ashes don't make you feel powerful anymore, you move on to the next spark. He reached for my hand, but I pulled back. His fingers hovered in the cold air before dropping to his lap. "Please," he whispered, "give me another chance. Let me come home. I'll change. I'll be better. I swear, I'll spend the rest of my life making it up to you." I stared at him, silence stretching between us. For years, those pleas would have broken me. For years, I would have bent, rationalized, forgiven. But not anymore. Not after the slap, the courtrooms, the nights of Sophie holding me together. "You want forgiveness," I said finally. "You want redemption? That's between you and God, not me." His face crumpled. "Amelia, don't do this. I have nothing left." I leaned forward, my voice steady, low enough to cut deeper than a scream. "You built this ruin yourself, brick by brick, lie by lie. You're not the victim of my revenge. You're the architect of your own destruction." The words landed heavy. He flinched, his shoulders collapsing inward, as if the truth weighed more than any debt collector ever could. His lips parted like he wanted to argue, but no sound came out. Only silence, thick and final. I turned then, pulling my coat tighter around me. My heels crunched against the gravel path as I walked away, leaving him hunched on the bench, alone against the wind. I didn't look back. Not once. Because there was nothing left to see. Walter Schwinker had begged, pleaded, tried to claw back what he had lost. But all that remained of him was a man stripped of pride, stripped of power, stripped of me. And as I walked out of that park, I felt lighter than I had in decades. A year can change everything. 12 months ago, I was a humiliated wife walking out of a ballroom with champagne dripping from my hand. Now, I am a woman reborn. The house, once heavy with silence, has become a sanctuary. Sophie and I filled it with new life, plants sprawling in the sunlit windows, walls lined with my paintings, laughter echoing down halls that once carried only arguments and apologies. It doesn't feel like our house anymore. It feels like my home. I opened my art studio downtown 3 months after the divorce was finalized. At first, I worried no one would come. Who was I, after all? Just a woman who had spent 3 decades behind a man's shadow. But the city surprised me. Women arrived in groups, some curious, some carrying their own scars. They didn't just come to see the art. They came because they knew the story. They wanted to stand in the presence of survival, to touch colors painted by hands that refused to stay silent. The studio flourished. Within 6 months, I had my first gallery opening. Sophie stood by my side in a dress she'd picked herself, her hand steady on mine as people praised the work. "Your pieces breathe resilience," one critic said. He was right. Every stroke was a confession, every canvas a reclamation. And Sophie? She grew stronger, too. She finished graduate school, her voice sharper, her stride confident. She no longer carried the burden of covering for her father, no longer tiptoed around my pain. She stood tall, a woman forged by truth instead of lies. Watching her blossom has been the greatest victory of all. As for Walter, he became little more than a ghost. After the final confrontation in the park, I heard bits and pieces. His company dissolved, creditors swallowing the scraps. The mistress had vanished too, reportedly moved out of state after the scandal consumed her. Walter drifted between cheap motels and borrowed couches, each move pulling him further from relevance. Occasionally, I'd spot his name buried in the tabloids. Former mogul seen drunk outside dive bar or once prominent developer files for bankruptcy. But the world had moved on. His downfall was no longer newsworthy. It was yesterday's gossip, stale and irrelevant. The man who once demanded every eye in the room now couldn't command a glance. He was diminished, forgotten. And that was the cruelest justice of all. One afternoon, as I locked up the studio, I passed a man on the sidewalk. His coat was frayed, his head lowered, his gait unsteady. It took me a moment to recognize him. Walter. My heart didn't race, my throat didn't tighten. I felt nothing but a calm indifference. He glanced up, eyes hollow, but when he realized who I was, he looked away first. That small act, him breaking eye contact before me, told me everything I needed to know. I didn't stop. I didn't speak. I simply walked past, my heels striking the pavement in rhythm with my freedom. Now, when I wake each morning, sunlight streaming across clean sheets, I no longer wonder where he is or what lie he's spinning. I no longer measure my worth by a man's attention or approval. I live for me, for my daughter, for my art, for the woman who clawed her way out of the wreckage and built something new. Betrayal once felt like the end of my story, but it wasn't. It was the beginning. Because Walter didn't just lose me, he lost everything. And I didn't just survive him. I outgrew him. The truth is simple. Betrayal freed me. And freedom tastes better than any champagne toast ever could. Thank you for watching and staying with me through this story. If it touched you, or if you've ever lived through something similar, I'd love to hear your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. Your words might help someone else feel less alone. Don't forget to hit the like button if this story resonated with you, and make sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next one. Every click, every comment, every share helps us grow this community of strength, resilience, and truth. Until next